What is up, leaders? I'm here in Matt Grimes' office because he has cool lights and a giant whale, and it makes me feel important to sit in this chair and look out over, the parking lot and just pretend it's my little kingdom to rule. So that's always fun. Video for this week. That's what I'm doing. Just lost my train of thought. So the video for this week, we're talking about spring this Wednesday. It seemed like winter was helpful, and I assumed that would be one that most people could connect with, because we connect in struggle and hardship and difficulty, and so spring may be a little bit different, and this might be a more select group of people, which is great. It's fine. Everybody will go through spring at some point, so it's valuable to all of us. But here's kind of how I looked at spring. Spring is new. It's a time where your eyes are being opened and God's doing new things in your life, and you're beginning to see more than you had in winter. And I believe, and now I can't, this whole seasons thing is kind of an analogy, and there's not. The Bible doesn't specifically say, hey, you go through a season of summer or spring or what. It just says, hey, there are seasons that you go through in life, and so we're just trying to compare it to the seasons of the world and weather. So I believe that we start out in the season of spring when we give our life to Jesus. So our eyes are open to the things of God. What He's doing around us, we begin to see more, and so it's kind of like the blind man. We're talking about the story of the blind man that Jesus healed. His eyes were closed to the world, and then Jesus spit in the mud, rubbed it on his eyes, and he cleansed it, and he could see. And for the first time, he could see the world and could see other things. And that's a lot like how spring is. You come out of this dark winter, kind of like coming out of a cave, and for the first time, you see light. And it's just incredible. It blows your mind a little bit, and it's not all easy, but it's better than winter, because God's speaking to you, and you're still adjusting, and some of it's hard, and sometimes you got to kind of squint because it's bright and you're not used to it. But it's obviously better. In the season of spring, so when God opens our eyes to Him and He begins to do new things in us, I believe that the first thing that He begins to call us to do is to surrender, calling us to a deeper level of surrender. And so I I compared this to marriage a little bit with Brycey and I. And so when I asked Brycey to marry me, I got down on my knee in kind of a surrender and surrendered my options to any other girl I would ever see. I surrendered my options to my plans, to my future, to the things I wanted to do, and I surrendered those things and took on her wants, her needs, her future, our future, what she wanted, what she needed, and said no to the things I did. In that kneeling on the ground, I surrendered and said, I want a deeper relationship with you more than I want the things that I'm giving up. And we see this is a trend in the Bible. Deeper relationship follows deeper surrender. Same in marriage, same with God. Deeper relationship with God requires deeper surrender on our part. And so I think there's three main areas that God calls us to surrender. And we're going to look at the rich young ruler. So the rich young ruler comes to him and he says, hey, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? Now the rich young ruler is not saved, but his eyes are open. He knows, hey, listen, this is the guy that has eternal life. If I want something like that, I need to talk to him. And so his eyes are opened, and Jesus says, okay, you know the commandments: do not kill, do not steal, do not blah 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 blah. And he says, yeah, I've done all these from my youth, and he kind of dismisses it. But the first thing that Jesus asks him to do is surrender his sin. And I think that he asks us to do that as well. The next thing he asks is to surrender his comfort, all the things that this rich young ruler had. Jesus says, all right, go sell all those things, come back, and follow me. So he said, hey, listen, get rid of the things that make you comfortable. And I think that often we confuse these two things, but God is not the God of comfortables. He's the God of comfort, but he's not the God of comfortable. He's the God of peace. And those are different. So comfortable is external, the things that are happening around me that make me comfortable. Peace is internal. Regardless of what's going on around me, I have peace inside of me because of God. So surrender your comfort, and then finally to surrender your future. And this is difficult because we kind of have to give up our calendar. And I'll talk a little bit about my life and how I've kind of become okay with being interruptible. So it doesn't mean that we don't have a plan, we don't have a schedule. There's things on my calendar right now that I have to go and get done, and that will, even if I don't get them today, at some point I'm going to have to get them done. And so for us to not have a calendar, not be organized, or not have a plan is irresponsible. But for us to not be interruptible for the things that God has for us is wrong. And I think that's one of the quickest things that God asks us to surrender, and just says, hey, your future is mine. The decisions that you want to make are mine. The plans that you had for yourself, those are mine. And so we'll talk a lot about surrender and what that looks like as you prep for your kids. I think some of what makes a great small group leader is vulnerability, and now not vulnerability so much so to where kids would wonder if they could follow you. Like if there's something that you are going through right now and it's a struggle, I probably wouldn't talk about that because you're in it. But if there's things that you've come through, that God's brought you through, and you're on the other side, and you would say, man, God wanted me to surrender this, and I didn't want to, and I learned the hard way, or God convinced me, or I immediately said, whatever it is. But that vulnerability to say, hey, listen, we're not just talking to you in this. This is something for us. And there was a point in my life that I had to surrender, fill in the blank. And to just have that vulnerability of, man, I'm not the only one that's going through this. My leader is going through the same thing. I sat with a couple on Sunday that they're just the sweetest couple, and said, they're 17 years old, and said we're struggling with staying pure. We haven't had sex yet, but we keep messing up, and we're really battling with that. And the first thing I said was, well, man, listen, I wish I could speak to this and give you some advice as someone that had done this right in dating. And I just had to say, hey, listen, me and Bryce struggled until the day we were married. We didn't have sex either, but we continually messed up. And there was a lot of hard conversations that we had, and there was a lot of seeking God. Is this really what you want for us? If we're not necessarily in your will in the way that we're acting right now, is this what you would have for us? And just for me to say, hey, listen, 3-4 years ago, I was in the same boat that you're in right now. And then to hear her response of, man, it's just so good to hear that a student pastor struggled with the same thing that I do. And part of that is we put pastors up on a pedestal, and that's wrong. But part of that is when you're in something, you feel like no one else could understand, and no one else has ever been through it, and that's just not true. So sorry for another long video. I think that during this series they're just going to be longer because this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and am very passionate about. So I sure love you guys. Thankful for you. So hope you have a great day. I will see you on Wednesday. Game day. Love y'all. Bye.